This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. And joining me as my very special guest is the... what is it?
The Senior Creative Executive, which just sounds silly.
It sounds very nice. That is, of course, our good friend Matt Martin. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so shocked it's taken us this long to actually do this.
I know. I've known you for what, like 8 years? 9 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, you are worth the wait, buddy. For sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should wait and say that for the end. We'll see. Okay, so here we are. We're talking with you. I want to know first, just as a fan, because you were a Star Wars fan long before you were a part of the Lucasfilm and this community. What made you first fall in love with Star Wars?
Yeah, so, I mean, some people have probably heard me tell this story because it's so stupid, but like, I was a kid during what we call the dark times, where Star Wars kind of wasn't really a big deal. Nobody really cared about it. It was still part of the zeitgeist. Like, you know, it was out there, but it wasn't what it is now. And so I knew of it, but wasn't super into it until I went to a sleepover at a friend's house. On a whim, they decided to put on Return of the Jedi. You know, it's like midnight. We're sitting there watching Return of the Jedi. Everybody else falls asleep because we're kids. And I was just fixated. Like it blew my mind in a way that I don't think that anything else ever had, you know, before or since, to the point where I actually left the sleepover, walked home, and watched the other two films that same night.
Oh, cool.
And then I continued to watch one of those movies literally every single night, like while laying in bed for, you know, the next 5-8 years, something like that. So that was really what got me into it.
So then what was the first one that you saw on the big screen? Was it Phantom Menace? Or did you see
the first
special
one I saw on
edition?
the big screen was special editions. So obviously I was a massive Star Wars fan. My parents are great and were very, very supportive of that. And I lived in Camarillo, California, which is like a little less than an hour away from LA, from Hollywood. And the what was then the Man Chinese Theater was doing a preview screening of the special editions that like you could get tickets for via a radio thing. I don't know if it was a contest or you just have to call first or whatever, but my dad managed to get us tickets. So I actually saw each one of those the day before they were released at the Chinese, which was probably the most ideal place to see those movies.
Oh yeah. I thought it was I thought it was amazing that for the finale at the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker, I got to see it at the Man's Chinese Theater, and I thought, well, there's really no more apropos place to watch it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I was actually just there yesterday to see Raiders on IMAX, which is pretty sweet too.
Oh man, Clayton and I were like, oh, I wish I knew this was playing because when we were there, of course, for D23, we were like, we should have went to this if we knew. Was it amazing?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that's a really cool IMAX. That's like a proper huge IMAX theater. So that was awesome. It's not the first time I'd seen Raiders on the big screen, but
sure,
you know, seeing it in that environment was really nice. And yeah, I didn't know it was happening either. I randomly saw the Chinese tweet about it, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know we released this in any capacity, but I'm there.
Oh, yeah, that's terrific. So obviously, as we said, I love your history with. I think everyone's history with seeing these movies for the first time is a really cool window into where the passion starts. But what made you realize you wanted to make it more than that and actually work on Star Wars? And what was your career path like?
Sure. I don't exactly know when I decided. You know, it was one of those things that I was obsessed with it as a kid. You know, before they started re-releasing things, I would read like the West End Games source books like they were fiction. Like I would just read them like a novel. So like that was just the thing that I was so into. And then when they started, you know, releasing novels and comic books and video games and everything, I just went off the deep end to the point where whenever somebody would ask me what I wanted to do when I grow up, it was always either, I want to work for Lucasfilm, which I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew where I wanted to be. With Imagineering being a close second choice. It was either I want to work for Lucasfilm or I want to be an Imagineer. Didn't have any real plans on how to get to either of those things, other than just being a fan of them. But, when you're a kid, it doesn't really matter. And then, so through, I became a pretty, a part of the fan community, kind of before it became an online thing. And then as it went online more and more, I was the chapter rep of the local fan force, which was sort of like the local fan club of Star Wars fans that was also kind of a network of fans. And eventually through that, I ended up getting invited to be a volunteer at conventions. So it was actually I think it was Comic-Con. It was definitely San Diego Comic-Con. I think it was 2002. I think that was the first one I did. But I was a volunteer there. I was literally taking silver Boba Fett action figures, putting them into cases for us to sell.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was so stupid, but it was like a dream come true. And I continued to volunteer for many years after that. Met lots of great people that worked for the company. Eventually, I started going to college for visual communications, which is sort of it's kind of like graphic design, but a little bit more theoretical, a little bit less on the art side, but definitely design. And the people that ran StarWarsShop.com at the time knew me from conventions, knew I was going to school for that, and they needed somebody as a freelancer to do really basic, grunt work design stuff. So sizing images to be, to fit the format of their website, or making banner ads, really boring stuff. Nothing particularly creative, but they knew that I knew their site and would jump at that. So they gave me the opportunity to work freelance for that. So I did that for a little bit while still volunteering. And eventually one of the people that I worked for, who was the buyer and product developer for the online store, told me he was leaving. I, on a whim, applied for his job, knowing absolutely nothing about buying or product development for the most part. And the person that was managing the store at the time essentially decided to take a risk on me, knowing that it's easier to teach the buying side of things than the Star Wars side of things. And that was kind of how I made it into the company. And then, from there, eventually started at we were part of StarWars.com. So when Star Wars Shop started to get sort of sunset, and Pablo Hidalgo, who was the content manager for the site at the time, was moving off to another position. It was sort of a easy thing to kind of move me into that position, since I knew the site so well and I knew Star Wars very well, and I could write well enough. So I was brought over there, did that for a while, and I was eventually, at one point, I was overseeing all of the Star Wars social media with just one person that was under me for that, which was Andy Gutierrez. Then I was also producing all of the video stuff with the video team for StarWars.com, and I was overseeing all of the content on StarWars.com, working with freelancers like yourself. It was a lot. And then I guess we're going the whole career path. From there, it was, in 2012, Kathy Kennedy said that she was creating a team to help work on new Star Wars storytelling. I looked at my boss at the time and I said, that's what I want to do. I told my mom. Eventually the job popped up just on the website. My mom forwarded it to me. She's like, is this the thing that you wanted? And that was it. And I applied and went through the whole rigmarole. I kind of think I was the only one that they actually interviewed, so I think they wanted somebody internal for that particular role. And I think I was kind of the natural choice based on everybody else who was working at the company at the time. and yeah, that's kind of been that ever since. And that job obviously has changed and evolved over time, but that's essentially where I'm at now.
That's wonderful. I only knew about maybe a third of that. Well, no, that's not true. I think I knew a little more, but I like, you're a pretty good storyteller, dude. So what a great what a great little connection there. And it's funny when you mentioned the Star Wars shop. I tell you what, I think every day for like 2 months, Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, I called that Star Wars shop line and asked if they had the 12-inch Darth Maul. I'm serious. Like, I don't know if you ever answered phones, but if you did, I'm sure I talked to you at some point.
No, I definitely never answered phones, thankfully. I was always behind a computer, lots and lots of spreadsheets.
That's cool. No, I miss those days. And the Star Wars message boards. Boy, that was a great online community.
Yeah, that was really fun.
And you could change your avatar. That was fun. I probably wasn't as productive in my real job as I should have been because that was just a lot of fun. But so you've got your job, obviously, as you just told us, has a mythology of its own for many fans. What can you share about what your job is like?
I mean, it's not as glamorous as what people might think. It's a big mix of meetings, which nowadays tend to be primarily in Zoom, and reading, like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reading. So I'm literally either sitting at a computer talking to people about Star Wars, or sitting on a couch or laying on a bed or whatever's comfortable reading about Star Wars. I do everything on my iPad, so I find the most comfortable spot I can and crash there and just reading, providing notes, giving feedback on sort of both overall story kind of trajectory and what works best for storytelling in general, and then obviously Star Wars lore and Star Wars as a franchise. Just trying to help our various creators tell the best stories and the best Star Wars stories that we can.
I told Pablo once I like to imagine it's like the beginning of the original Superman, where the creator, whoever's working on the project, is sitting in this little ring, and the three, like a bunch of you are just around them. There's your giant heads talking to them. I think that's kind of funny.
I think at one point it might have been a little bit like that. Now, content that we tend to be sort of spread out across different mediums. So, like, obviously Pablo's on my team and I work with him, but it's actually relatively rare that I'm necessarily in the same room as him for meetings, because he's working on one project and I'm working on another or whatever.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Star Wars that goes on and a lot of fun things to do. So if you had to explain, let's pretend like there's someone out there who doesn't know much about Star Wars. I guess my wife, for example. But if you had to explain Star Wars to someone completely unfamiliar with it, I guess they've never been to a grocery store in their life, what would you tell them, and how would you recommend it?
Ooh, that's so hard.
I don't know how I'd answer. I don't know.
No, that's not fair. You can't answer a question you don't even have an answer for.
I think I could wing it.
I don't know. I think I would try to explain that it's a modern myth. It's really a very grounded story about a person who comes from nothing and rises up to become a hero, sort of in the trappings of a science fiction and fantasy world. But it's not in an intimidating way. It's not so sci-fi that you need to be a sci-fi fan, or so fantasy that you need to be a fantasy fan. Its storytelling is done in such a way that anybody can relate to it, and it's you could tell a good Star Wars story without any of the Star Wars nouns, and it's just going to be a good story.
I love that.
So I would say that's probably my elevator pitch, I suppose.
It's a good one. You're hired. Well, what I also think is cool about the majority, I would say just about every Star Wars story that's out there now, whether it's book or animation or film, I really feel like, for the most part, you could just turn it on or flip the page or whatever, and you wouldn't feel lost. Like, I don't know that you can say that about a lot of franchises, because obviously Star Wars is a very deep, rich lore. I mean, you know that better than I do. But I feel like at its core there's still some basic, and I don't mean that in terms of simplicity. I just mean like at its purest form, it's about heroes and allies. Joseph Campbell and quests and challenges and growing as a person and helping other people and found family and I feel like that's Star Wars kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. It has so many relatable themes that, like I said, despite its Star Wars or its science fiction and its fantasy trappings, it's all of these things that anybody can relate to and most people have gone through, and it's just weirdly relatable in sort of it just kind of puts it through like an allegory almost,
right?
Which makes it maybe easier to digest.
Yes, I think so too. So while we're talking about themes, let's talk about the mythological aspects of Star Wars. There are certainly many themes present that many people have talked about and enjoyed over the years. Are there certain ones that speak to you on a certain level?
I would say it's probably its core theme is hope, and I think that is the thing that speaks to me the most about Star Wars. Like I said, it's an original story, but it's super relatable, and in the end, that good will prevail. That is Star Wars. There's clear good, there's clear bad, and the good's gonna win. And watching these people that you love overcome, terrible odds to, have that ultimate victory. It's such an uplifting feeling, and it's kind of like, people ask me my favorite character, and I'm always say Leia because I wish I could be more like her, and she is that embodiment of hope. So it's it's this sort of optimistic, non-cynical world that you just don't really get a lot of in storytelling nowadays, and I think it all boils down to that hope theme there.
Which completely appears to reflect one of the things that inspired George in the first place because of the culture and the history of the world in that time. A lot of moral ambiguity and a lot of gray and, Charles Bronson films and all this kind of stuff. And then Star Wars comes along and shows, what? Hope's the number one thing. Let's go with that.
Yep. Yeah, he wanted to tell a story that, that kids could get behind, but that their parents could also enjoy. And there just wasn't a lot of that in the 70s. 70s film is dark.
Yes.
And Star Wars becomes this like shining light that changes sort of the trajectory of film going forward.
I love that you mentioned Leia. I've said since I was fortunate enough to write the Star Wars book that the character I learned the most about through that process was Leia, because as well as I that when you have to write something or you have to teach or explain something, you learn it in a different way. Leia, I never really considered. It's there, but you don't really at least I personally didn't focus on all the challenges and the things that make her who she is. You've got bosses, you've got leaders. She's a leader, and she never forces you to think her way because she's not like her father. But she has this amazing inner strength that just makes her just this larger-than-life icon.
Yep. Yeah, she's like what what you want every politician to be. We don't actually have in the real world.
Right. That's
but she is that idealized, perfect sort of person, but not in a way that feels false or feels, unrealistic in that world. Like, you understand all of the struggles that she went through that lead her to that point, and what her parents, where her parents come from, both her real parents and her adoptive parents, and just how all of these things build this person, this like shining beacon that is able to rally a galaxy and take on an empire.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but you're right. She's a politician, but she's not political.
Yeah, I mean, she is. We just never really see that side of her. It's not like we ever see Leia hanging out in the Senate, but she did it. Right. You just accept it. You kind of accept, yeah, she would have been good. She would have been on that podium the same way that Padme was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. But I think what triggered it the most for me is you reference it really beautifully. She's authentic. She's authentically herself. No hidden agendas. You know how she feels.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really cool. So let's talk about the collaborative nature of working with the Disney parks and what that means to you both as a professional and as a fan. Because when when Galaxy's Edge opened in 2019 in California, I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that first experienced that, and I got to talk to you there by the X-wing, and I remember being so excited for you. Because I know, you and I have become good friends over the years, and I know how much you love these parks. So, I mean, it's like, like you said at the top of the show, you've got the Imagineering call to it, and then you love Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and boom, look at this.
Yep. Yeah, I'm Imagineering adjacent is what I usually say. Yeah, no, but it's both personally and professionally, it's incredible. Personally, I'm from Southern California. Disneyland has been a part of my life for a very long time. Basically, ever since I was, or I guess I shouldn't say, ever since I knew anybody who was able to drive, because I actually didn't get my license for a couple of years after. But as soon as I had friends that were able to drive, I had an annual pass, and we were there all the time. And even when I was living in San Francisco for 12 years, we would make the trek down about once a month just to go to Disneyland. I've been to every Disney park except for Hong Kong at this point. And it's just, I love the feeling of being there. I love the joy that it brings people. I love being around just the energy of those parks. And I love an immersive and, sort of interactive experiences. And, it's just my favorite thing in the world. So getting to work on it was mind blowing. And then obviously, I've known as a fan how important and how creative and amazing Walt Disney Imagineering is. So being able to work with those people, being able to sit in the room with them, speak out, work out a story or work out what an attraction should be or a store's story should be, or any little minor thing is so fun because they are as brilliant as they always come across in documentaries and things. And they're just super, super fun to be around. So, I'm way fortunate and get super excited anytime I have, Imagineering meetings pop up on my calendar.
Well, I remember, maybe it was at Galaxy's Edge. I don't think it was at the Star Cruiser because I think that was well after. Yeah, it had to be after. But I remember you got to have one of those Batuu silver name tags, and it had your name on it. That's got to be one of your most prized possessions.
Oh yeah. And you can't see it here because I'm not in my actual office, but my office on the studio lot, I have a collection of name tags for all the various name tags that I've had, which includes the ones you could buy in the store, at the parks where you could get the custom Star Wars ones. It includes my Galaxy's Edge one. It includes the Delos one, which was the code name for Galaxy's Edge. So Imagineers who worked on it before it was even announced, we had our own name tags. I still don't have my Star Cruiser one, and I'm pushing very hard because I need that one to complete my collection. But yeah, having a name tag with my name on it is, it's pretty incredible.
I think that's like, it's not, you can't even say it's a bucket list because it seems like such an unattainable thing. So I think that's one of them. I'm really happy for you. Speaking of the theme parks, again, you and I got to be a part of, obviously you've been working on it for a long time. I got to be on the Star Cruiser media event, and so it was fun to just do it, experience with my family, got to spend a lot of time with you. Mason wanted me to ask you how it felt to be beat by him and Sabacc.
You know what? It doesn't feel great losing to a kid at Sabacc, especially when it was a different rule set of Sabacc that I helped create. You would think I would be a lot better at it, but he's a shark, man. When he's old enough to gamble, you should keep an eye on that kid.
Yeah, we've already got restraining bolts ready. No, he had the best. Of course, you're just such a nicest, kindest person. And he had the best time with you. So whenever your name comes up for whatever reason, he was like, he always says, Matt Martin? You're not Matt. You're Matt Martin. But I feel like the Star Cruiser is just an amazing, wonderful experience. It's so incredibly unique, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is unlike anything that I had ever experienced. I remember the very first time I did it, it was early playtest, and I was nervous. I was like, what if this doesn't work? And what if it doesn't work for me? Because I'm relatively introverted. I'm not, going out there and LARPing on the weekends or anything like that. I'm like, what if I don't get pulled into it? And from like the first interaction with a character, I, was so on board and just was like just so into it the whole time. And I just had the most amazing experience. And by the end of it, I just looked at Scott Trowbridge and a couple of the other Imagineers and was like, whoa, this totally works. And I miss it now. Like I've done it a couple times early on. I actually haven't done it since it opened properly. And I miss it. Like, we talk, AJ and I talk about it all the time. We're like, I wish we could go back to Star Cruiser. We could forget about real life and you just sort of live in Star Wars for a while. And I think I hope it is seen as sort of the future of immersive entertainment to some extent.
Yeah.
Because it's such a crazy thing, and it's the sort of thing that only Disney could do. And I'm so appreciative to whichever Disney execs actually greenlit the crazy thing, because if I saw that on paper, I would have been like, whoa, that's nuts. But I really do think it is a harbinger of the future, and I hope first off, I hope we get to do more, because I would love to do more Star Wars ones, but I kind of just hope Disney gets to do more so I can just go enjoy more experiences, in that same sort of format, for different IPs, original IPs, whatever. I just, I'm on board. I'm sold on it.
I agree, and I remember we talked about that. Like, what's so amazing about the Star Cruiser, and we're super excited because we're taking a bunch of listeners next summer, June 12th to the 14th.
Oh, that's awesome!
I know.
I'm jealous.
Well, hey man, we'll save you a spot. But there's just so many cool things to do, and it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world. You can go there and you don't turn off your brain, because there's a lot going on. But I like what you mentioned, because my wife is introverted too, and she said a very similar thing. She said, you know what, I thought I was whatever, but she was completely pulled in. It just has a very organic way of doing that, which I think is really amazing. So kudos to you and the team for making that happen.
Thank you. It's funny that you mentioned that you kind of forget the real world, because I don't know if it was the one that you were on, but definitely one that I think it was my first real test cruise. That wasn't a play test. It was just like the thing all the way through. Was the weekend of both the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day. I mean, I'm not a football guy, but like, it wasn't until we left that we realized, oh, whoa, we missed two big cultural events, and didn't even dawn on us. The date did not even occur.
That says it all. All right, so let's transition out of Star Wars a little bit. I know one of my favorite things to talk to you about is not Star Wars related, but horror movies. And of course, we're getting near. We're in the throes of fall, and it's Halloween season. But what other non-Star Wars stories, not necessarily Halloween, but anything, what do you enjoy as a fan? Where you're not working on it, you're just able to, I just want to watch a good story. What do you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, horror movies are definitely my thing. That is my genre, 100%. There is no other genre in the world that I would watch just because of that. But if somebody says there's a new horror movie in theaters, I'm gonna go see it. Speaking of, you should go see Barbarian. It's amazing.
I was going to
ask you. It just came out. It's so good. It'll blow your mind. It does some really interesting, smart storytelling stuff that I think you will appreciate.
Cool.
But it's nothing like anybody expects it to be, and that's what was so great about it. So don't look into it. Just go watch it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of a nerd in general, so I do take in most of the big pop culture stuff. I like Marvel's, the MCU. I read a lot of comic books, so I read Marvel's comics. I read a lot of independent horror comics and things like that as well. I haven't read an actual novel that wasn't an audiobook in many years, and it makes me sad, but I think it's just because I spend so much time having to read for work, I don't quite enjoy it the same way that I used to. But I've listened to some pretty cool audiobooks lately. I recently listened to the autobiography of Elvira.
Oh,
And it was amazing. And the audiobook was great because it was read by her. And she's a horror icon, but she's also one of those people that I feel like I've sort of grown up with. Like as a kid of the 80s that was into horror and spooky things and Halloween, she's been like my queen for a very long time. And, getting to hear her tell her whole story in her voice was pretty moving and powerful. What else? I'm really excited for Willow. That's coming out very soon. From Lucasfilm.
fantastic trailer at D23.
Yes, that trailer, like, it has two amazing lines that trolls, I'm really miffed. Like, that's so funny. That's so Willow. And I'm not a big fantasy guy. Like, I like Lord of the Rings, but it's not my thing in any way. Never been into like Game of Thrones or anything. Willow is my fantasy. Like, that is the movie that I loved as a kid. That and Labyrinth. Those are the fantasy movies that I loved as a kid. And like seeing it make a return by somebody who I know really cares, John Kasdan really cares about Willow as much as I do because we've geeked out about it before, gets me very excited. So I'm beyond excited for that show. I don't mean to like just plug another Lucasfilm thing that didn't even really work on, but I am very excited for it.
I don't blame you. When I saw the trailer for it, I was like interested because it was a new event, a new project. But there's something about, at least what I've seen in that trailer, it's just like the right tone, and it has like, and I haven't really talked about this on Coffee with Kenobi yet, but it just kind of got, it doesn't feel like aggressively, based on trailer, aggressively violent or intense. It just feels like I'm going to tell a really good mythological story.
Yeah,
which I think that's, I don't know, I find that very appealing.
Yeah, there's a certain DNA to any stories that George has told. American Graffiti, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, they all have this, this optimism and this level of fun to them that a lot of things just kind of shy away from, and that's what brings me in. It's those. So it's like, the show takes a tone that George created, and that's what's so cool about it.
At the D23 Expo, they showed a trailer for the Haunted Mansion. You've got Owen Wilson, you've got Rosario Dawson, you've got a great cast. And then at the end, I was in the room, and they said, now you can't make the Haunted Mansion without the ultimate horror scream queen. And the dune buggy rolls out, and it spins around there, right, not quite right in front of me, but in the same room. Jamie Lee Curtis and I was like I actually have goosebumps right now. It's like, oh my gosh, because you're the one who helped get me into the original Halloween in the first place.
Yeah, I wish I was there for that. I definitely saw that and almost broke down because I love Jamie Lee Curtis so much. I mean, from the original Halloween, but just everything she does, everything she's done since, everything everywhere. I mean, I have hot dog hands right there. Literally anything that Jamie Lee does is gold, and she's just such a great human being in general. And I'm pretty sure she's playing Madame Leota. Is that right?
Yes.
And Madame Leota is also special to me because my dog is named Leota. She's named after Madame Leota, so now I have, one of my all-time favorite, actors playing a character that is so important to me that I named my dog after. So, yeah, very, very, very cool.
That's fantastic. So I guess sticking with the same genre, is that something that, did you have like a gateway into this too? Because I remember the first horror movie I saw, and it had a negative effect on me, was Poltergeist, because it scared the you-know-what out of me. What about you?
Oh, that's funny. Poltergeist is back in theaters this month for Fandom Event, so you should go see it again and see if you can conquer your fears.
I don't think I can. I think I'll just be a chicken.
It's a Spielberg movie. Come on.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But no, I think the gateway into horror movies for me was Ghostbusters, which isn't quite a horror movie, but it got me. I was very, very into Ghostbusters And that sort of got me into just spooky things in general, and Halloween. And, you know, obviously horror movies are just such a natural extension of that, you know, I started watching all the classics, and, you know, after seeing all the classics, it was that kind of traditional go to the video store and rent the one that has the, you know, the coolest cover. So I definitely saw a lot of movies that I knew nothing about. I just picked it by the art, and, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, 80s and 90s horror movie art is sometimes a little better than the movie themselves, but I also have an appreciation for bad horror movies, so it works out.
Was there ever a time where a horror movie actually scared you?
I mean, when I was a kid, they would scare me, and like jump scares would work. Now I'm pretty desensitized to it. You know, like especially any trope heavy horror movie, you know, I kind of see things coming a mile away. That doesn't mean I enjoy them any less. It takes a lot to get me to jump.
Sure.
But I would say, you know, Exorcist is my favorite horror movie, and I'd say it's still probably the scariest one. You know, it's not going to make me jump out of my chair, but it gets you deep down. Like you see something that horrible happening to an innocent person, and at seemingly random, and you're just like, oh, this sort of thing could happen to anybody. And then also just, you know, Father Karras's arc of sort of losing his faith and finding his faith again is really powerful. So I think that movie hits me in two different ways, where it's like the hope of Star Wars, which is sort of the Father Karras side, and then the scariness, which is the horror movie side. And it's kind of those things that I love together.
Would it surprise you to know that I've never seen that movie?
It doesn't surprise me. It disappoints me, but it doesn't surprise me.
I don't want to disappoint you. I watched Halloween.
You should really watch it. It's scary. It is. I will give it to you. It is legitimately scary. There's some shots in that will, you know, maybe keep you up at night, but it is also just a very well done, well crafted, well written movie.
I think it's genuinely considered an actual masterpiece.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yes, 100%. I liked it. I mean, Jaws is technically a horror movie, but I also think that is an absolutely perfect film.
Totally.
I mean, everything.
Just saw that on IMAX a few weeks ago too.
I know. The closest IMAX where I live is like 3 hours away.
Oh, that's so sad. I'm so lucky to live in LA. We have, you know, I spend a lot of time in movie theaters because there's always something playing. If it's not a new film, it's, you know, some revival thing.
Which is very cool. So I know you attend a lot of conventions. Do you have stories of interactions with fans that kind of reflect to you the best of our community?
Yeah,
don't talk about me, I'll blush.
Definitely not you. No. Yeah, I mean, I've interacted with so many great fans. What I really loved this actually celebration this year. Obviously, we had a tough, you know, year and a half or so leading up to that with COVID and lockdowns and, you know, political craziness, and just it was a bad time. And that was like the first time that the fandom sort of got together. And it was even a little dicey online, you know, like fandom was not, I mean, it's still not in the best place it could be. And so I was a little bit concerned about what celebration would bring with that atmosphere. But it was so uplifting to just be walking around and just nonstop hearing people compliment people. You know, either that costume is so great, or how did you do this, or it's so good to see you. Like, it was just, everybody was just so happy to be there that I was like, oh yeah, this is why Star Wars fandom is so important and so much better than, you know, what the online side of it may be perceived to be. Mm-hmm. So it was great. I was helping the live stream for the entire event, and I was producing stuff on the floor. So I was basically on the floor with a camera person for almost the entire time. So I was really just there, like, watching whatever we're shooting, but also observing people. And it was just it was great. And seeing so many people at this convention in particular that were like wearing costumes of things that I had worked on or had a big part in was amazing. Seeing so many Cal Kestises running around after, you know, working on Fallen Order for years, and being so happy with that. It was so great to see, you know, people as invested in that character as I am. But if you want a specific story, I guess, about, you know, one sort of thing with fandom, it was, let me think. It must have been Celebration in 2015. I think it was Orlando. It was the first time we'd ever done a live stream. I was still with the online team at the time. This was like right before I got the story job. And so we had a lot of people that were helping us, a lot of fan volunteers that were helping us, you know, do whatever we needed to have done while we're doing a crazy live stream for the first time and don't know what we're doing. One of them was a huge Rebels fan. Like, Rebels was one of the things that he loved more than anything. And because he was so dedicated to our team, he skipped the Rebels panel to, you know, to help, which I think if he would have asked any of us, we would have forced him to go, but he didn't. Skipped the Rebels panel, didn't see the trailer, didn't see anything. And I was upstairs in our office with him, you know, a couple hours later. He told me this, and I was like, what were you thinking? He's like, no, you know, I needed to be here. I needed to help you guys. You know, you guys needed me. And I'm like, well, we did, but still. But because I was also the person that had to post trailers and things online, I had the file for the trailer. So I was like, look, dude, sit down at my computer. We're going to turn the lights off. You're going to watch the trailer here. So I got to sit and basically watch him react to the trailer. And that was a really moving experience. You know, like I still remember there's the part, it fades to black and you hear Captain Rex's voice.
Yes.
And like seeing him light up, like, oh yeah, that's what this is all about. So that I think is probably one of my favorite kind of fandom stories.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. I remember being there watching that, and that crowd erupted. So I can just imagine his heart must have grown like the Grinch's, man. That
exactly.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Yeah, I think Star Wars Celebration. You know, like I like what you said. The perceived online opinion of Star Wars fans that's a really good use of verbiage there, because I feel like for the most part they're wonderful, and that I think Star Wars does for so many of us. It's an escape. It makes you think, and it really teaches us that there is really so much good in humanity. You just have to have that hope that you continue to mention. So Matt, I'm going to ask you one more question. It's a pretty tough question, but I have faith in you. Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. Blue milk or green milk?
Oh man, this is divided families, divided countries. No, I go blue. Especially, I particularly like the blue milk that's on the Halcyon. That's not the icy blue. Same flavor, but it's a little bit more smooth. But yeah, I'm a fan of the blue milk. The green milk, I can kind of take or leave.
Okay, I'll allow it. I will say I never had the swirl, the Mon Calamari swirl at Disneyland that's got the sour, I think it's like boba balls in it or something.
Yeah, I haven't had it yet either, actually.
It's great. I just had it the other night. It's really, really good. I highly recommend that. Now, the green swirl is so spicy, you'll feel like you have to shave your tongue.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm not great with going too spicy. I still want to try it, but I might have to, you know, I'll let AJ get it and I'll have some of hers because she's way better at the spicy stuff than I am.
Yeah, that is a wise decision. Well, Matt, thank you so much, not only for your friendship and your kindness over the years, but for being such a great ambassador of Star Wars and for joining us on Coffee with Kenobi.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.